Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. On today's episode, we're talking about ayahuasca, as you can see from the episode title, if you're subscribed on iTunes. And we're talking about it because it's one of the most impactful and most meaningful experiences that we've had traveling. When we were in South America, we attended 2 ayahuasca ceremonies after learning about it, and when we were planning to go to South America, it was one of the top things on my to-do list because it is something that it's possible to do outside of South America, but that's really, especially jungle in Peru, is really where it comes from. And it is a part of many people who are visiting South America on backpacking trips, itineraries, and something that people do have experiences with. And everyone I've talked to who has had an experience with ayahuasca has had a really insightful, impactful experience. So that's why we wanted to talk to you about it and kind of let you know about our experiences. So if you are planning on going to South America, it is a great opportunity to kind of have a personal growth experience if that is something that you're looking for. Anyways, on to the episode. Hola y bienvenidos al World Wanderers Podcast. Soy Ryan.
Soy Amanda y estamos tu hosts.
After talking to Gabriel Weiner on the last episode of the podcast, we've both been inspired to work on our pronunciation.
Yeah, and to practice our Spanish.
So now you can tell I sound Spanish.
Me too. Right?
Maybe. So today,
another special episode.
We're going to talk about something that we've thought would make a good podcast episode, but we've been afraid to talk about.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about ayahuasca today. So I guess a good place to start. What is ayahuasca for those of you listeners who are like, say what? What's that word?
So ayahuasca is, well, it's a couple of things. So ayahuasca is a drink that's used in a ceremony in South America. Indigenous people in the Amazon, they use the ayahuasca, which is a vine and one other plant, make a tea out of it, and then you drink it. Mm-hmm. And then what's so special about the drink is that it contains a lot of DMT, which is the active ingredient in like magic mushrooms, or people can smoke DMT.
Yeah, apparently that's a crazy time. So the way that I best like to describe ayahuasca when people ask me, what's that crazy word that you just said? Medicinal hallucinogenic. That kind of resonates with me the most in terms of what it is.
Yeah, and one of the things that's special about ayahuasca is that it's very much maintained a context and a tradition around the use of the drug. So
medicinal hallucinogenic.
Yeah, we're going to get into kind of stereotypes and stigmas around drugs as you get into the podcast here. But I think, it's a drug. I don't have a problem referring to it as a drug.
Okay, we can roll with that if you want.
But the same way Advil's a drug. Caffeine's a drug. I don't have a problem.
Alcohol.
I use drugs every day.
Yeah, alcohol is a drug. Food's a drug to a lot of people.
Sugar.
Oh, sugar is definitely a drug. 5-cent candies. So
the thing that's special about ayahuasca is it's really maintained the traditional ceremony and context surrounding the drug. So whereas you get a lot of people doing mushrooms with friends while they're drunk in a high school in North America,
or even music festivals have a huge drug culture there, and tons of people will be mushrooms, acid, lots of pretty intense hallucinogenics, and they're just out there, they're mixing it with alcohol, they're just watching music. And ayahuasca is used in a very spiritual context, in a very spiritual setting.
Yeah, and I think spiritual is a word that turns a lot of people off. But
don't turn off the podcast.
That just, when it's spiritualizing, it's very introspective. Mm-hmm. And it's, like a changing perception of the world and kind of an experience like that. So what happens? What is the context of the ayahuasca ceremony?
So I guess a good place to start with that is that ayahuasca is from the indigenous people in South America. So you can find it in, it's most prevalent in the jungle in Colombia and Ecuador.
Peru.
As well as Peru and Brazil. And then it's probably the most popular in Peru. So Peru, you can find it in places outside of the jungle. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but like it's really started with the indigenous cultures in the Amazon, and now that it's become a more popular thing and people are realizing the therapeutic value of it, it's kind of spread. So now you have the options to do it in major, kind of more touristy locations, like near the coasts, near Cusco, Sacred Valley in Peru.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting though, because, you know, if you're in Canada or the States and you're like listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this at the end of this episode. It's not really something that, it's not like going out and acquiring marijuana or magic mushrooms. You don't just find a dealer and get your ayahuasca. It is very ceremonial. And I mean, I would definitely recommend like honoring the ayahuasca. And I'm sorry, I know you hate that I just said that. And really respecting, I guess, the drug and doing it in the cultural context that it was intended for, but the indigenous people.
Yeah. So you're kind of saying that's the way, like when you go down there, you don't go, like, it's not like going to Amsterdam, going to a coffee shop, buying some marijuana and then heading out in the street or sitting down and smoking it. You know,
like munching on a weed brownie.
So the process, they do ayahuasca ceremonies, and the ceremonies are led by ayahuasqueros. People from North America kind of call them shamans. Yeah. But they call themselves ayahuasqueros, which like literally means like ayahuasca person, I guess. Scaro, I don't know. So yeah, you basically, when you're looking to do ayahuasca, you're looking for a specific shaman. And usually those shamans will be the ones who will make their own ayahuasca brew, or they'll work closely with someone who's been doing it. And these people who specialize in brewing ayahuasca usually have a long family tradition of, doing it and making their own recipe. So every ceremony you go to will have a different brew of ayahuasca, and it'll lead to a different experience because there's different amounts of different things in there.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And so the ceremony is, it always takes place or should always take place in a room, kind of like a round circular room with a really tall ceiling. That's sort of the traditional hut style for the ayahuasca. And then you usually fast like the day of. So starting from lunchtime onwards, you don't really eat. You eat like super mild in the morning, not very much food, really bland. And then you don't eat through the evening. And then it's at night that you actually take the ayahuasca. And then it's best when you're in the dark. So it's best to be under the influence of ayahuasca when it's nighttime.
Yeah. So ayahuasca ceremonies pretty much exclusively happen at night. I think probably exclusively happen at night. And yeah, it's kind of most of these places you go have built their own little like temple thing. Kind of looks like a teepee.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
We went to 2 ayahuasca ceremonies. One was kind of up in the mountains in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and one was actually in the jungle. And the one in the jungle was kind of this open enclosure. Had the same roof on both of them, but one was closed in and one was kind of open, so you could hear all the bugs and noises of the jungle surrounding you. And so you were talking about fasting. There's kind of an ayahuasca diet because it is a pretty strong drug substance, so it can interact with certain foods in your body negatively, and also if you're on, I think, things like Prozac and other antidepressants, it can have like really terrible reactions to those.
Yeah.
But something that's kind of unique about ayahuasca, and not unique, there are other drugs, but compared to recreational drugs, is that there's some significant physical purging involved. So that's why when you fast, it's kind of in preparation for this, because if you diet well beforehand, it limits the nausea, perhaps diarrhea, and those physical symptoms.
Yeah. So it's very, I guess, cleansing, you could say. Like, I mean, to go in there and be like, oh, well, I'm not going to like throw up or have diarrhea is a pretty big statement, because I think pretty much everyone under the ayahuasca purges. And before our first ceremony, the shaman told us that, you know, you kind of get to a point where it feels really good. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I hate puking. I hate diarrhea. Like, it's never going to feel good. And it actually does. It's very emotionally cleansing. It's very like physically cleansing for your body. So it actually does feel pretty good, which it's hard to explain to people, because I think the biggest question when I talk to people about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, you have like a ton of purging. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, you pretty much like vomit and shit the entire time. And they're like, why would you ever choose to do that? Or it's like, after doing it once, why would you ever choose to do it again? That's a pretty interesting question, I think.
Yeah. Well, so those negative aspects balance out with positive aspects.
Yeah. So ayahuasca is, I mean, obviously very like physically, it kind of cleans you out physically. Brian can talk a little bit more about that. Having poo coming from who knows where. But
so, yeah, some people, if you've like, I had never done any psychedelic, psychoactive drugs before this. So I didn't really have my image of what that was like, was kind of like this TV image of like, you know, there's that 70s show, like freaky psychedelic visions happening, or like maybe I would lose complete control. Like, you don't really know what that experience is like until you've experienced it. But you do remain in kind of pretty good control of yourself. Like, there's washrooms, you can go to the washrooms. It's fine. Everyone's got little buckets that they're throwing up in. Like, it's not extremely unsanitary, gross experience.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of my biggest fears, especially like I have a pretty sensitive stomach. So I was like, oh my God, what if I poo myself? What if I poo myself in a group of people while doing ayahuasca? Like, that would be horrifically embarrassing. And there was like no point that I even came close to having an accident in my pants.
Yeah, that was actually
you are very much in control of your body, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was kind of a moment of anxiety for me as well. I was like, this worry about, like, am I going to make it to the washroom? And then you kind of realize, like, oh yeah, like, you'll know when you need to go, you'll be fine. But
yeah, it's kind of a good lesson in like learning to trust yourself. And then similar to you, I've just have this like image of Eurotrip when they take like all of that, absinthe, and they have like the little green fairy that like leads them on these adventures. And I was like, oh my God, what if this like Peruvian green fairy like leads me on an adventure into the woods and I just disappear? It's like not like that at all. Like, you open your eyes and you're very much in like the present moment in the room, able to walk to the bathroom, just feeling like a little bit sick and out of it.
Yeah. So we've kind of touched on some of the negative aspects of the experience. But so why is ayahuasca becoming more popular? Why do people go do it?
So ayahuasca, kind of like, if you're doing any type of personal development, I think, like, I'm going to just steal the words from you because you've described it really well. It's like if you're peeling away, like if you're peeling an onion and you're peeling layer by layer, and that's like yourself, your personality, the identity you've put on the outside. And then it's like all your experiences are these different layers. Ayahuasca kind of just like shatters that onion in a million little pieces. And so you really have this like these moments of like self-discovery. And I feel like these really like, I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah. Deep insights about your life and yourself. And, you know, I think these things that we all know, but we don't really, I guess, like identify with. And obviously everyone's experience is going to be super different, just depending on like your life, your childhood, how you've grown up, your experiences to date, what you're kind of like going through emotionally at that point in your life. Like, everyone's different. There's no two people who are going to have the exact same experience with ayahuasca, but it's very eye-opening in terms of discovering who you are and kind of realizing things about yourself, I think.
Yeah. So in, like the research I did leading up to it, I watched a couple of videos and read some stuff about how, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but from these
Really?
things I was reading, no, not yet.
What's that degree on the fridge that says Ryan Ferguson Neuroscience?
That's fake.
Oh.
But apparently it activates the areas of your brain responsible for insight. So that's like your, I think like your neofrontal cortex, like the really like rational part of your brain, and also like the center is responsible for like long-term childhood memories and stuff. So like you said, everyone has different experiences, but kind of the things that remain constant when you talk to people are like these really sharp insights into their behavior, other people's behavior, like society as a whole, like really sharp insights, as well as bringing up really painful memories that you've been trying to avoid for a long time. And then usually some sort of in combination, like, oh yeah, these things are affecting me in a really deep way, and I'm pretending they're not affecting me.
Yeah, and I think too, like sometimes it's not even that clear. Like for me, sometimes it was that clear, and sometimes it was really like just colors and like obscure images, and it wasn't super clear what it was that I was processing. But then it's like I'd have this really like big purge, and it's like I'd release some of this like emotional energy that had been in my body for like years and years.
Yeah, so that's kind of the metaphor they draw when you go to the ceremony. We never really kind of finished describing the setting, but so you walk in, the size of the ceremony really depends. First one we went to was quite large, second one was quite small. You go in, circular room, people are sitting around the circle, there's a shaman, usually has like a couple helpers, and then the shaman will usually say something at the start. The first one we went to spoke English, so you gave kind of half an hour kind of talking about what to expect.
Which was like really, really great for me.
Yeah.
Because I really don't like uncertainty at all.
Yeah, and kind of how to approach it and prepare yourself. And then the second one spoke Spanish, so we didn't really get much of that. But thankfully we knew we had this first experience. So yeah, circular, do that. Then you go up and the shaman kind of like looks at you, gets a feel for like how much you need, just kind of eyeballs it, gives you the tiny bit of drink. It's maybe like a couple ounces. Yeah,
it's not a ton. Like it's in a pretty small cup and it's not full. So
yeah, you drink it, it tastes atrocious.
I would describe it as if a team of basketball players soaked all their feet after a basketball game with their dirty socks on in a bathtub, and then you took a ladle of water from that and drank it. That's how I describe it. It's disgusting.
It's just exceptionally bitter. Like
I feel like it tastes like dirty feet.
But so it's different every time, obviously. And I kind of lost what I was originally starting to talk about when we started talking about that.
Sorry, that was my fault. You were going through kind of what happens. So you go up and they gauge how much you drink and then you drink it. And then from there, what happens? Oh, so you go sit back down. And then the way you're kind of, it's the first one we went to, the shaman described it as a noble silence. So it's like a meditative thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like you don't want to interfere with people around you. You just want to sit there and kind of be introspective about what's going on with you. Yeah, for sure. And the second one was like that too. Like it is very much about going into yourself and not about other people. So it's really important to obviously like feel comfortable enough to like release whatever you need to release, whether or not it's like a cry or a laugh, or if you need to move around, that sort of thing. But it's also respecting the fact that you're in a room with other people who are dealing with their own stuff. Yeah. And so that's something that happened with us. The first time we were sitting quite close together. The second time we kind of put our mats close together and we're going to sit there. And then the guy actually was like, oh no, you need to be separate. Yeah. I think, which is really good. I think it's important to have your own space. That's one thing I think, and we can talk about this a little bit later, but I really liked the first one a lot more, outside of the fact that I think it was great to have more space in the second one, because not only were you close to me in the first one, but there was a stranger really close on my right-hand side. So I feel like, you're just like very close with other people. And for anyone out there listening, like if you're big into energy, like you are very much in other people's like energies. It's cool though, because throughout the entire ceremonies, there's music playing, which can be very powerful for the experience.
Yeah. So, it's just on the energy thing. It's not like when you're using the word energy, you're not feeling someone's energy. You just feel uncomfortable because the person beside you seems like sketchy or happy. Like, I don't think you're feeling their energy, but you're just kind of like feeling.
I think you could feel the energy in the room for sure. We've talked about this before at the first ceremony, how like sometimes the music would get like really loud and powerful, and it seemed like everyone was kind of like purging at the same time. I feel like there was an energy in the space. But.
Yeah, I feel like that's just like a really like spiritually word to describe something that's like quite rational and understandable.
Do you want to try and explain your feelings on that in a different way?
Well, I just think you're processing all this information at an unconscious level.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if I see someone, I can read how much of a threat that person is by their posture, by their appearance, by their, maybe like their health, maybe if their skin looks nice, I don't know. And then I can process that, and then I'm responding to that with emotions inside of myself. And that's not me feeling their energy. That's just me processing all this information without really being aware of it.
Okay. I hear that.
Anyways, so back to the ceremony. Yeah, there's like traditional type of like music that goes on called like ikaros, which are like the traditional chants. Mm-hmm. And then they have kind of these like ferny looking shaky things that are like
they're exactly like that. Ryan nailed that.
And some songs to go along with it. And depending on where you go, they might have kind of different ikaros and different tones. Like the first one kind of like felt like really like comforting and peaceful. The second one kind of had this like darker, it was like this indigenous woman with a kind of, she was like deep voiced and kind of, yeah, it just seemed like really like kind of dark.
I felt like she sang the same thing for like 4 hours.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's the basic thing. You're sitting in a circle. There's people there. You're kind of focusing more on yourself, but as the ayahuasca kind of has more of an effect on your body, that the idea of like sitting and meditating kind of isn't, you kind of just like lose a bit of control. So you're kind of just doing whatever you're doing. There's not really like this sense of trying to like force yourself to do anything. But yeah, you kind of stay on your mat, and some people are, reliving experiences and crying. Some people are having a lot of nausea and puking. Some people are really enjoying themselves and like listening to music, kind of like moving around. So just all this kind of varied stuff, but it's people just like lying down. So to get back to kind of the one thought that came up in my mind was kind of related to you referring to it as medicinal hallucinogenic and me referring to it as a drug. Mm-hmm. And it kind of thought like, yeah, you know what, this like really is a medicine. Like medicines are drugs.
Yeah. It's just a different word with a different like sort of connotation attached or stigma.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of through, I guess, I don't know, maybe the last decade, it's really starting to see that what you'd refer to as psychedelic drugs, so like ecstasy, magic mushrooms, things like ayahuasca,
acid,
iboga, LSD, are really starting to be used in a therapeutic context and actually studied and showing these results. So there's studies showing that MDMA, which is the active substance of ecstasy, has had really positive effects on people suffering from PTSD. There's been studies showing that psilocybin mushrooms, which are magic mushrooms, have had really positive, long-lasting effects on people's personalities, happiness, quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's actually like dealing with the stuff that's going on with you, as opposed to just like taking an antidepressant and trying to forget about your pain.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk about... Sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that's like been a big shift in my brain is the way that I think about it. And I guess that, drug, it does have a big like negative stigma attached to it. And I don't think that ayahuasca has any negativity to it. So that's why I say medicinal hallucinogenic. I definitely get what you're saying though, because, you know, we use drugs on a day-to-day basis. People, you know, at least one person every day that at work pops an Advil, if not 2 or 3 people taking them for all sorts of reasons.
Of your total coworkers, at least one person.
Yeah, and I work with like 30 people, so
yeah, people
give context.
And people are using drugs too. Like that's maybe if you've got an inflamed ankle and you're taking Advil, that's good. But like if you feel sad and you're eating sugar, like that's you using a drug. Mm-hmm.
Even I work with a girl who's she uses coffee when she feels sad. And she knows she does. I felt sad the other day at work and she was like, oh, do you want to go get a coffee? And I was like, no. And she's like, oh, like I use coffee as like a way to make myself feel better. I noticed that coffee makes me feel really happy as well. Excited. Yeah, it gives you that boost of energy, right?
But it's not, I think all those things like...
It's like chocolate as well. It's all temporary.
And it's all diminishing returns when you're using something that doesn't. It's like there was a quote about it's hard to stop using something that almost works, or it's hard to get enough of something that almost works. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the experience with drugs, and that's something that quote came from a podcast I was listening to about addiction, about how these addicts are people who have pain and are trying to use substances to mask that pain, and it works. Like if you hurt really badly and you do heroin, that makes you feel a lot better, mm-hmm. but it doesn't get away. It doesn't take away the pain. So as soon as that drug goes away, the pain's back, and every time you use that drug, it's less and less and less effective.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about something like ayahuasca is the setting that you're in, the context, and just the way that it works on your body is that it kind of forces you to feel these things that you've kind of like tucked in the back of your mind that you've never really felt, which is, you know, kind of like crappy in that moment, but it really helps you sort of work through things in your life that maybe you didn't even know were still there. Yeah.
And so instead of an escape, it's very much, I don't know, what's the opposite of escape? You're very present with like everything that's going on.
Yeah. I was going to say it kind of forces you to like process these things that maybe you never really wanted to process.
Because I think that's kind of a common thread in, like, I don't know, I was hesitant to use the word society, but like kind of taught growing up that when you feel something uncomfortable, you just need to shove that inside of you, smile, don't pretend like everything outside of, you know, it's like when your family's upset at each other and then you see a friend and everyone's happy again, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like shove it in, pretend it's not there. And then a lot of people with that kind of emotionally repressive attitude, a lot of drug use is kind of extends from that. So like people get drunk, like, you know, you have a breakup and then instead of really feeling sad and having people around you who are like, oh, that's cool, you're like, oh, you know what you need to do? You need to get drunk. You need to forget about yourself. You need to have all these negative experiences related to trying to escape instead of trying to really be present with the discomfort.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like, I mean, so many people are disconnected between what's going on in their mind and their physical body, but our physical body is ourselves. And we carry so much of this like emotional, you know, physical trauma in our bodies. So lots of people with tight hips, you know, they go into a big hip opener in yoga and they feel all these like weird emotions and they feel super uncomfortable with it and they don't really understand what's happening. But it's like your body's holding on to these things and creating tension within yourself. And ayahuasca lets your body completely relax and just really like release that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was one of the most remarkable things for me. I had gone in with kind of a back injury and went through this process of like, you know, every muscle in my body is kind of tensing and relaxing. And I just felt like extremely relaxed. And I used to be very inflexible. Like I couldn't get within like 8 inches of my toes.
Like a foot of your toes.
Of touching my toes. And I was like, I bet I could touch my toes right now. So that's standing. I couldn't get really close to touch my toes. Sitting, like I could barely sit on flat ground. And so I was like, I bet I could touch my toes right now. And like lean forward and like I can get my like chest on my legs. Like there's no muscle tension whatsoever in my body.
Yeah.
Which was kind of this weird
like, what did that feel like for you? Because like I'm pretty flexible. It's like obviously I have tension in my physical body, but what did that feel like for you?
Well, so it's weird because with something like a psychedelic, there's always this like lingering thought, like, is this experience, because you are having some visuals and other kind of things that don't really seem like your normal reality, and you're like, is this real? Am I imagining this? What's going on? And then sort of like really see that, like, oh yeah, this is like my real body, and I'm now like 100% more flexible. It's just like this weird, really weird experience. And because I'd heard, like, I was going through a back injury, and I'd read some stuff about how like back injuries are really psychological and not as much physical. And then, so this whole experience was kind of really convinced me that that's what was going on. Like, I was afraid and stressed and tense and afraid of my back being hurt and other things. And I was holding everything in, and my muscles were like really unconsciously just like tense as hell. And then I could just relax and let it go, and then feel perfect.
That's super cool.
So some of the things, when we started, we kind of talked about how we were a bit afraid of getting into this topic because, you know, hallucinogenic drugs aren't really something we
like have ever partaken in.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. So I grew up in a family where drugs were kind of bad, but it was like drug use, obviously not cool. And then, so I kind of got introduced to the idea of there being positive benefits to psychedelic drugs really through listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. And they have lots of guests on who talk about having positive experiences, all these things. And that's how I really found out about ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And then you kind of found out about ayahuasca through me.
Yeah.
Really.
Like, I had never heard about ayahuasca before you. And like you, I think even probably more intense than you, I grew up in a household that was very anti-drug. Like, I think, like, you know, the way society is, like, as young kids, we have DARE come into school, which is what its drugs are.
Really entertaining.
Really
enjoyable.
No, what does DARE stand for? Like, actually, it's like the people who come in and they give you all these, like, you know, they show you through the blue.
Eat pot, and he's going to die. You're going to do mushrooms, and you're going to shoot yourself in the face.
I think it's like worse than that too. It's like they show you Through the Blue Lens, which is filmed in
Vancouver.
In Vancouver on, what's the street that's really bad?
East Hastings.
East Hastings. And they talk to these people who become like super addicted to like crack and heroin, and they're just in these really bad emotional, mental, physical states. And so I was really, you know, kind of brought up in this world where it's like drugs are bad. You know, it's not okay for me to come home under the influence of a drug because my parents are going to be way more mad at me than if I come home under the influence of alcohol. And so when you first mentioned it, I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know. Like, it's really outside of my comfort zone. Like, I don't know if I'm okay with that type thing. And then, you know, we sort of listened to some stuff together, and that's kind of where I learned more about the positive influences of something like ayahuasca.
Yeah, and we're going to have links in the show notes to quite a few different resources that we use leading up to it to find more out about it. There's some really great YouTube videos, lectures, and other podcasts that kind of delve into some more scientific and more about like the therapeutic practices. And we're kind of just trying to set the scene for like, you know, a general overview of what this is about. Yeah,
and so there's a doctor who's from Vancouver. His name's Gabor Mate. We've actually seen him speak. His research is basically about how stress leads to chronic disease in the body.
But it's more like I think his main work is with drug addicts in Vancouver.
Yeah. And so he has a lot of like speeches and talks about ayahuasca. He's, you know, used ayahuasca personally, and he talks a lot about it firsthand. And I feel like he's a really great resource for, you know, giving sort of the scientific positive benefits of using ayahuasca to process things in your life. And I think something, you know, obviously check out the resources and, you know, watch things and look at things for yourself and decide if it's right for you or not. But I think it's important to remember that even if you haven't been physically or sexually abused, or, you know, you don't have an addiction to drugs, or you don't have like severe PTSD, doesn't mean you don't have stuff in your life that's worthy of, you know, undergoing an ayahuasca experience, because I think everyone can get really positive takeaways from it.
Yeah. And it's like, so many other things, especially related to drugs, is like this thinking of like, yes, no, 1-0.
1-0?
So like either you have been traumatized as a child or you weren't. And trauma means like severe physical beating, sexual abuse, or, you know, nothing. But like everything's a spectrum in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing can really be like completely black and white.
Everyone has some degree of trauma. Maybe there's someone who doesn't, but like, you know, people have some degree of trauma, painful emotional experiences that you haven't processed correctly. Not correctly, but just haven't really thought about, because so much of how we're taught to process emotional issues is just to repress everything and to pretend they're not there. And that kind of baggage does sit with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty crazy how it just kind of is like in you. It doesn't just go away, like it is inside of you.
Yeah. And it's like the thoughts you're like, oh, I'm going to lock that away in a vault and like never think about that again. And then something reminds you of it and you're like, oh shit. Sucks. And the only really way to process is to like look it straight in the face and just be like, okay, that happened. And I don't feel good about it, but it happened. And then it kind of starts to fade away. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, and you kind of started to get into it, was how there is really like, you know, like you grew up in a situation where some drugs were good and some drugs are definitely not good.
Like drugs as in like Advil was obviously okay. Like
alcohol.
Sugar was fine. Sugar. Yeah, alcohol was completely fine. It's still in fact encouraged in my household. And
mine was much the same way, but I think I was a bit more open to it, maybe from just having been exposed to more people who were open to it.
You grew up in British Columbia. I grew up in Alberta.
But what was so as you heard me, I brought up, oh, this ayahuasca thing is something that I'm interested in doing when we go to South America. And to the point, like as we were traveling, starting to research more about it. And what was what was going on in your head as you kind of made the shift from like, because you were like quite anti-drug and then to the point of...
Yeah, I mean, I was very much like brought up anti-drug. It was like a pretty big like belief in my life that was kind of like passed down to me from my parents. And it's like, so you first kind of like brought the idea to me in terms of like, hey, I want to do this while we're in South America before we even left. And so I feel like, you know, because it wasn't until close to the end of our trip that we were in Peru. So I basically had like, I'm going to say like 5.5 months, like almost 6 months to pretty much process the idea of it. And I think for me, it was sort of like, I don't feel like you were ever like, you have to do this. You were just like, I'm going to do this when we're in Peru. Like, you know, you should look into it. And I think for me, because I had sort of this negative connotation of drugs in my mind, it really took a lot of education for me. So I was listening to people who had experiences with ayahuasca, listening to doctors like Gabor Mate talk about research and the positive benefits and how it's not negatively impacting your body, and how the concept of drugs has really been like put in this category where, you know, people get really drunk and then they go to a nightclub and they pop a bunch of ecstasy and then they like don't drink enough water and they clench their jaw and they die at night. So it's like, then that goes into my head as like, oh, you take ecstasy, you're going to die. And I really had to like educate myself around how the context of use is extremely important. So it's like, yeah, ayahuasca probably is not beneficial if you're going to, you know, down a massive pint of it at a bar or a club where there's like a ton of music and people and you're under the influence of alcohol. Like, I would never encourage that. I don't think that's a positive experience at all. So I think it was just shifting the way that I thought about it in my mind. So I think that was it for me. And just finding, you know, I think that you were really helpful with giving me a lot of like resources. And I think it's really important for people out there who are maybe like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. Just make the decision yourself and make sure that you know that you've read about it and that you feel comfortable where you're going and that you feel comfortable with the decision you're making it and you're making it for yourself. I think that that's the big thing.
So you think it was a lot of fear? Like,
yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fear. I'm like, oh my God, like, are my friends going to be like, oh, she's a druggie now? And like, people aren't like that at all.
But there's some, I don't know, like I've talked about it with a few people and you kind of sense that they're like, this doesn't mesh, like, because this person does drugs, now they've got to be in this category and that doesn't mesh with the person I'm seeing in front of me.
I haven't really experienced that much personally. I think that, yeah, I think there's definitely people out there who are still very like uncertain about it, but
I think for the most part, people in our generation, so like mid-20s, maybe probably 30 and under, really, you know, marijuana legalization is extremely popular among that group. Full drug legalization is like, you know, there's a substantial popularity.
And I think it's like, you know, people are really starting with the prevalence of the internet and all the research that's out there. People are really starting to go out there and get their own views, which I strongly encourage because, you know, the FDA has released things about how if alcohol and sugar were to be coming through now, like they wouldn't be legal because that's how bad they are for you. But then there's something like marijuana that's, you know, illegal based on this like crazy history in the past that doesn't even make any sense. So it's like when you start actually finding out information about things and you're not just taking, you know, maybe what your parents have passed down to you or what you've learned from school.
What's on TV.
Yeah, what's on TV. I feel like it opens this door to this whole new realm of knowledge. And I think it's completely shifted my perspective. And to clarify, I'm not saying go out, get drunk tonight, you know, take some acid and have this like crazy time. I don't think that that's the right context to use that. But, you know, if you're suffering from PTSD or if you've had something super traumatic in your life, maybe see if there's somewhere where you can go and you can, you know, use psychedelic drugs in a healthy way.
Yeah,
or as like a very therapeutic way.
Especially something like depression that's really common. And I went through what I would call like a period of depression. And I think that was really related to really trying to avoid dealing with like a lot of things that I didn't like about my life. Like I wasn't like looking in the mirror and seeing a person I liked and I wasn't doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. I was trying to avoid those feelings, run away from those feelings. And I think that's kind of when depression sets in. It's kind of like this numbness that you get from constantly trying to run away from your feelings.
Yeah. And I mean, I worked with a girl who was like quite depressed and she would just, you know, pop these antidepressants. She would take all this medication. It made her feel like physically ill. Just not a healthy way to deal with it. It seems like people who are dealing with these things within themselves, you know, they go to the doctors, they go to a clinic and people are just like, oh, take these drugs, like mask the pain.
Yeah. It's treat the symptom. Mm-hmm. So you have this opportunity to like, I don't know, you're sick and you get a sore throat and it's like, oh, I'm going to take a throat lozenge. And it's like, well, maybe you should worry about why you're sick.
Yeah.
So you take an antidepressant that makes you feel happy, treats the symptom, but it doesn't deal with the root cause of that unhappiness. And that's like where something like ayahuasca really specializes. Like it really blasts you in the face with that root cause. And and then you're like, oh shit, that's the root cause. Like I know what it is now.
Yeah. Yeah, which is cool to have that sort of understanding and realize that it's like, it's not coming from somewhere else. It's all inside of you. Like, you know, it's there deep down, which is pretty cool to be able to kind of like unearth and find this thing that's within you.
Yeah. And so like you can tell, like if you've listened this long in the podcast that we obviously feel like it was a positive experience for both of us. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to speak for you. I feel like it was a really positive experience for me.
Yeah, I think it was hugely positive for me. I think there was a lot of positive things that came out of it.
And even like a lot of people there, it seems like you can have a positive experience in the moment, a negative experience in that moment. Like maybe that negative experience is reliving childhood memories. There's a lot of pain, or maybe you go through some sort of really scary experience in that moment, but then you learn from it and you come out and you see, oh wow, this was really a positive negative experience that had a massive positive impact on me in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing with, if you're going down to South America and you're thinking ayahuasca is something that you want to do, I would definitely recommend doing some research and researching the place that you're going to go to, because the shaman is making the mixture for you. And I think it is really important to, read some reviews and know a little bit about where you're going, and just being aware of like safety.
Yeah. So if, as you like, it's something to be taken like quite seriously, not like, oh, we're down on this tour and then my tour guide's like, oh, everyone can go do ayahuasca this afternoon if you want to. Like, that's not a really good situation to put yourself in. You want to be researching in advance. And there are, like, with the internet, like there's basically like a TripAdvisor for shamans that you can find.
Yeah, and we'll put the link on the show notes for that for sure.
And it's tough because there's a lot of information out there that are kind of like everything. There's both sides where it's like you Google ayahuasca Peru and there's these top hits for retreats you can do. And then you'll find people saying, oh, you never want to do the commercialized ones that are for foreigners. They're not authentic, blah, blah, blah. And you find people who say, don't do the cheap ones. Those are people who want to take advantage of you. And you read stories because there are people who have gotten into bad situations where they, some go to some secluded place by themselves. There are females and bad things happen.
Yeah, because you do have to remember that you are drinking something that somebody else has made for you. You're not seeing how it's made and you don't really know what's in it. So you want to make sure that it's a credible place and that, you're doing that research and making sure that you feel comfortable with where you're going to do it. And I would say that if you arrive somewhere and you get a bad feeling about it, or there's something that tells you like, I don't want to do this, like I would listen to that. That's my biggest takeaway from being in South America in general is intuition. Follow that intuition if you ever feel like you're unsafe in a situation.
I feel like that's hard though, because I feel like whenever I get that advice, I'm like, it puts me into like overthinking things, and I'm like, I don't know do I feel unsafe? I don't know.
But like, I feel like you would know if you were in like a sketchy situation. Is all I'm saying. I feel like, some people have that intuition. I just follow that. Like if you get a bad feeling about it, just don't participate in it.
Yeah. One thing I would say though is, those businesses that are more geared, like more legitimate, I guess legitimate is a tough word. So like, there's businesses that like do have good SEO and like nice facilities, and they're maybe more expensive. And they're more established instead of just like one shaman in the woods. Like maybe you sacrifice a little bit of tradition with that, but this business is really focused on its reputation because it is a bigger business and it has to be more concerned about reputation.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And yeah, I think something going in for me, I felt a lot of fear about things I was reading. There's not a lot. There's like quite a few like negative stories about it if you start Googling ayahuasca. I think and those stories have more weight than positive stories because you're more likely to hear us put in like a news article. News stories, the news stories are almost always negative.
Yeah.
And that made me feel a lot of fear. But from everyone I've ever talked to who's done it, and that's obviously anecdotal experience, nothing but positive experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same way. But I would say go out there and do your research. We'll put up show notes with our resources at www.theworldwanders.com. And if you have any questions or you're seriously considering doing ayahuasca while down in South America, please reach out to us. We're happy to, talk to you more about our experiences or to answer any questions that you may have about ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Do you have any final comments or thoughts?
No, but just definitely we're going to have resources posted. There's this one lecture that Gabriel Mate gives on childhood trauma and using ayahuasca to overcome that trauma that is really, really good. And there's also a CBC documentary showing him as he works with addicts, goes down to the jungle in Peru, maybe Colombia, and then shows him there, kind of gives you some background on it, and then takes you to this experience where they're working with addicts from Vancouver using ayahuasca to help them overcome the trauma that led to their addiction. And that's really good. So yeah, there's just tons of good resources out there. So if you are intrigued, keep researching. Like that's the best way to learn more about it and to feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.